Today on Universe Live, it's a sports takeover. Join us for this special edition as we remember the 25th anniversary of the 1996 BYU football team. Hi, and welcome to the Universe Live Sports Special. I'm your host, Tanner Lewis. In this special, we look to remember the 96 team in a way that you've never seen before. That's right, we'll relive the highs, get inside perspective on stories from that year, and even show you why the 96 team is the blueprint for success when BYU joins the Big 12. But before we begin, we'd like to let you know that everything produced for this show is from the authors of the November issue of the Daily Universe magazine. That special issue is available at universesports.com and anywhere you find the Daily Universe magazine. So, why are we remembering the 96 team?
Well, 25 years ago, the 1996 football team took the field against a top-ranked Texas A&M team and beat them in a thriller. That team finished the season with an incredible 14-1 record, the winningest football team in school history. In fact, at the time, this team was also the winningest football team in the history of college football. Led by senior quarterback Steve Sarkisian, the Cougars defeated three ranked teams that year. Number 12 Texas A&M to open the season in the Pigskin Classic, the number 20 Wyoming Cowboys to win the WAC championship, and number 14 Kansas State to become Cotton Bowl champs in the only New Year's Bowl game in program history. Along with beating the ranked teams, the Cougars took care of the games they needed to win. The only loss of the season coming on the road at Washington, the 96 team finished undefeated at home and undefeated versus their rivals. One of those games was a 37-17 win at Utah that ended a three-game losing streak to the Utes and solidified the Cougars as the WAC Mountain Division champs. Along with the incredible trophies and victories won during that year, this BYU team was also one for the record books. Quarterback Steve Sarkisian became the seventh Cougar to win the Sammy Baugh Trophy. Given annually to the nation's top passer, Sarkisian finished the season tying a then NCAA record of 12 consecutive games with 200 yards passing. That talented offense also made its mark in the BYU record books. Scoring an impressive 571 points during the 96 season, that team ranked second at BYU for most points scored in a single season. This BYU team had it all. With a resume like this, it's easy to see why 25 years later, Cougar Nation remembers them and why current and future Cougars are trying to emulate them.
How's that for a resume? One of the Cougars trying to emulate a star from the 96 team is Mason Wake. Known for his hurdles, Mason is following a tradition that was started 30 years ago by tight end Chad Lewis. Here to take us back and relive one of Chad's most iconic hurdles is Emmy Franks. Emmy?
Thanks, Tanner. Chad Lewis began hurdling in high school when he was a high jumper on the track team. But when he came to BYU, he walked on to the football team. And though he left his track career behind, he didn't leave his hurdling behind. Chad had always wanted to try hurdling in a football game to add another explosive element to his skill set, but he'd never had the opportunity. Finally, in the last game of his freshman year in 1993 versus UTEP, Chad finally got to fly high on the field.
John Walsh threw me a pass over the middle. I caught it. I ran up the sideline, and their safety came to tackle me, and I jumped right over the top of him. And then I ran around the field going crazy. And then later in the fourth quarter, we're coming north. Same play. I catch a ball. I run up the sideline. Same safety comes to tackle me, and I tried to jump him again. This time he caught me, and he tackled me in the air. Mark Philbrook, the BYU photographer, captured that, which became the national photo of the year. It's called Bronco Rider. At the end of that game, I was sitting home thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I've been wanting to do that for so long. I've been thinking about it. I've been dreaming about it. And I just said, okay, from now on, I'm jumping over everybody.
And he sure did jump over everybody. Chad totaled 17 hurdles through his BYU career and many more in the NFL as well. BYU football has seen iconic hurdles in recent memory from the likes of Taysom Hill, Zach Wilson, and Mason Wake. With so many hurdles in Cougar football, it can certainly be said that the legacy that Leaping Lewis set back in the 90s has left a mark on BYU football forever. We'll look forward to seeing more high-flying hurdles from Mason Wake as the Cougs continue their 2021 season. Back to you, Tanner.
Thanks, Emmy. Chad's hurdles were certainly one of the many highlights from that special 96 season. However, in today's show, we are not only going to relive the top moments from that year, but the top 4 games from that magical season.
Number 1, BYU versus Texas A&M. Starting the season with a bang, the Cougars open up the '96 campaign versus the 12th-ranked Texas A&M Aggies at LaBelle Edwards Stadium in the Pigskin Classic. Coming out of the half tied at 20, the Texas A&M Aggies scored 2 touchdowns in the third to take a commanding 34-26 lead going into the fourth quarter. However, that day belonged to BYU as the Cougars scored 15 in the fourth quarter, including this game-winning touchdown from K.O. Kealalui.
Well, they show a regular rush. Deep ball, yeah! Touchdown! BYU leads! Levi Kealalui, the KO punch!
BYU defeated the 12th-ranked Aggies 41-37, setting up what would become a magical season. Number 2, BYU at Utah. No season can be a success if you can't beat your rival, right? The Cougars were ranked 8th in the polls as the '96 team headed up north to face the 8-2 Utah Utes in the season finale. Coming into the game with a 3-game losing streak to Utah and the WAC Mountain Division Championship on the line, the Cougars looked to finish the season strong, and finish the season strong they did. Led by running backs Brian McKenzie and Ronnie Jenkins, BYU was able to rush for 4 touchdowns, including this 16-yard touchdown run from Ronnie Jenkins.
Inside the 17, here's Jenkins on a little delay. Ronnie Jenkins scoring.
Both Jenkins and McKenzie rushed for 150-plus yards as the Cougars defeated the Utes 37-17, securing the WAC Mountain Division title. Number 3, BYU vs. Wyoming in the WAC Championship. Finishing the season with a 12-1 record and moving up to 6th in the polls, the Cougars met another ranked foe in the 20th-ranked Wyoming Cowboys for the WAC Championship. Played in Las Vegas, the Cougars jumped out to an early lead going into halftime up 13-0. However, the Cowboys wouldn't go away, as they scored 25 points in the third and fourth quarters to take a 25-20 lead. With 2 minutes to go, Wyoming took a controversial safety that gave the Cougars a chance. With no time left on the clock, Ethan Pochman was able to kick a 20-yard field goal to send the game into overtime. Moments later, Ethan Pochman sealed the game with this 32-yard field goal.
Out of the hold of Alan Boardman. It's over. The Cougars win it.
The Cougars defeated the Cowboys 28-25, winning the 19th WAC championship in program history. Number 4, BYU vs. Kansas State in the Cotton Bowl. This game featured a top 15 matchup as the number 5 BYU Cougars faced the 14th-ranked Kansas State Wildcats. Opening the scoring for BYU on a safety, Shea Meerbrook would go on to have one of the best games ever by a BYU defender, ending the game with 12 tackles and 6 sacks. Meerbrook highlighted a strong defensive performance that would eventually win the game for the Cougars. Going into the fourth down 15-5, BYU would go on to score 14 in the fourth, including this game-winning touchdown from K.O. Kealalui.
Good protection, it's for Kealalui, touchdown!
On the ensuing possession, the Cougar defense would step up big again as Omar Morgan sealed the game for the Cougars.
Intercepted! Omar Morgan!
BYU went on to win the game 19-15, capping off a 14-1 season with a New Year's 6 Cotton Bowl championship.
Those were some great moments. Moving on to a heavier topic, the opioid epidemic resulted in a nationwide crisis. But over the last few years, a lot of research and focus has helped educate the public and curb the crisis. Addison Kerr explored just how the crisis impacted key players from the legendary 1996 team. Addison?
Thanks, Tanner. The opioid crisis was handled a lot differently in 1996 than it is now. We'll hear from just one of the players that experienced this epidemic firsthand.
Injuries are all but inevitable in football, and prescription drugs allowed players to play through the pain that came along with those injuries. But in 1996, players and team doctors didn't know just how intensely addictive opioids could become. Doctors thought they were just doing the players a favor. Several players on the 1996 team became addicted to opioids, and one, Brad Martin, a linebacker, eventually passed from complications of years of drug abuse that began at BYU. Derek Stevenson, a teammate of Martin's, separated his shoulders during a game against Alabama. He was given a manila envelope with pills inside to tide him over for the plane ride home. That was the beginning of his addiction.
Yeah, just wasn't really prepared to deal with, how the drugs were going to make me feel, how much I would learn to like them throughout the course of the entire season.
Derek hid his addiction for fear of getting kicked out of school. Opioids wreaked havoc on his life. It took years before he was able to get clean.
I just decided that I needed to start being more honest and vocal and not be so ashamed.
Derek now works as an advocate for recovery and speaks to current college athletes about his story and the harsh reality of addiction. In September, he attended the BYU versus ASU game, where the 96 team was honored in front of 65,000 fans. As the team stood at the 50-yard line while lights shone down, someone from the crowd went from person to person, writing something on each teammate's hand in black Sharpie. On everyone's hand was the number 10, Brad Martin's number, a teammate lost to opioid abuse, a reminder to never let it happen again.
The whole team just talked about how we were being honored for having such a great team and such a great season in 1996, 25 years ago. All of us, something was missing, and we knew that that Brad wasn't there.
Although the opioid epidemic still exists, it is much more difficult for athletes to obtain addictive prescriptions. Coaches and doctors have made it a point to educate their players on the addictive qualities of these drugs and to help and support those that might be struggling. Our knowledge on the subject has come a long way, but as with anything, there is still a long way to go. Tanner?
Thanks, Addison. Coming up, why the 96 team is the blueprint for success when BYU joins the Big 12. But first, we'll look at what members of the 96 team are doing today.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
If you love them enough to relearn math so you can teach them math, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. It's been 25 years since the 96 football players left BYU and took different roads to become football stars, devoted fathers and husbands, and businessmen. Let's take a look at where some of the 96 players are today. First, we have Steve Sarkisian. He is a football coach for the University of Texas. He is married to L'Oreal Smith, a former college track star and coach. He has 3 children, Taylor, Ashley, and Brady. Next, we have Chad Lewis. As we all know, he played tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles for several years. But after retiring from the NFL, he traveled the world. He is now the Associate Athletic Director over development at BYU. He has 7 children, and he lives in Utah County with his wife. Remember offensive tackle Joan Tate? We have some news on him as well. The former NFL player has stints with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Chicago Bears. He retired after 10 years. Moving on, we have linebacker Shea Muirbrook. He signed as a free agent with the Oakland Raiders in 1997. Now, he's an assistant property manager at Pacific Eagle Corp. In 2012, he was inducted into the AT&T Cotton Bowl Hall of Fame. Finally, some honorable mentions. We have 2 former players that are currently working at BYU, and 2 current players whose fathers were part of the 96 team. Ed Lamb is the defensive coach for the 2021 team, and Edward Roderick as the offensive coordinator. If you remember Courtney Smith, you should know that his son Justin is the kicker for BYU. He is not the only one playing for the same team as his dad. BYU defensive lineman Gabe Summers is Hiram Summers' son, who used to play the same position. All of these players are an example of success. They all shine together at BYU and follow a different path to become the football stars, businessmen, husbands, and fathers they are now. Back to you, Tanner.
Thanks, Jocelyn. The 96 team is best known for their New Year's Cotton Bowl championship. But did you know that BYU was snubbed from an even bigger bowl game that year? Here to tell us more about that and the aftermath that followed is Cameron Moo. Cam?
BYU beat Wyoming in the WAC championship game in overtime on their way to a 13-1 record. They moved up to number 5 in the AP poll the next day, and many expected them to be invited to the Fiesta Bowl with an at-large bid. The Cougars were ultimately denied that opportunity as 7th-ranked Penn State, in a head-scratcher, was chosen instead. Fans and media members were shocked at BYU's exclusion. Following the season, the WAC called for change in how teams are selected for major bowl games. They wanted to make sure that such an exclusion would never happen again. Those talks eventually fizzled, so Utah Senators Hatch and Bennett called for a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing to review college football and the possibility of antitrust violations. Among those called upon to testify at the hearing were BYU tight end Chad Lewis and Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell. Lewis explained that all he would have hoped for was a chance to compete. McConnell wanted to give the non-Power 5 teams a chance.
The key issue for us was the interest of playing the top competition and the chance to compete for another national championship. BYU won the title in 1984. We feel like we have proven that we can compete with the very best. As a team, we just wanted what we thought was a fair shot, and that's what I received as a walk-on, and that's what we wanted to receive as the 5th-ranked team in the nation.
The basic message, Mr. Chairman, is that if David wants to slay Goliath, he better do it during basketball season. He won't be allowed to play Goliath when the football postseason rolls around. College football has no room for the underdog. In fact, as evidenced by the 1997 New Year's Bowls, college football doesn't even have room for the top-ranked teams. It's already been referred to several times here today, unless those teams are a member of the Exclusive Bowl Alliance.
As a result of the hearing, the rules were changed that any team that finished the regular season in the top 6 would receive an automatic bid. The Bowl Alliance was only around for 2 more seasons before it was replaced by the Bowl Championship Series, which eventually made way for the college football playoff that we have today. The legacy of that 1996 BYU football team lives on in the 11-1 season and number 11 final ranking a year ago, and this season's strong start, but more importantly, by influencing change in college football and helping to give every team a chance, a shot to play on the biggest stages at the end of the season. Back to you, Tanner.
Thanks, Cam. College football wasn't the only thing the 96 team had an impact on. Current and future Cougars will be trying to replicate what they did in order to find success when they join the Big 12. Caleb Turner and Jackson Payne, the hosts of the Universe Sports Talk podcast, tell us why the 96 team is the blueprint for success when BYU joins the Big 12.
The 1996 BYU football team. What a squad.
What a squad. An absolute unit, if you will.
I would go so far to say that. You know, we've been talking about it all show, and right now between me and Jackson, Caleb Turner here from the Universe Sports Talk podcast, we're going to break down a little bit of what made that team so special and how that connects and relates to the current BYU program.
Absolutely. Obviously, the 1984 team won the national title, but there's a lot of people that think that 96 team could have beat them by 1 or 2 touchdowns. So pretty special group, like you said, a lot of great faces on that team, one of Lavelle Edwards' all-time greatest units. And like you said, Caleb, there's a lot of parallels between the 96 team and the 2021 team. It's been a quarter century, but there's a lot of parallels, and it's been said that the 96 team offers that blueprint going forward for how BYU can compete and succeed in the Big 12 in a Power 5 landscape.
Exactly. You know, you mentioned Lavelle Edwards. We've got him right here behind us on the screen. Current head coach Kalani Sitake always mentions Lavelle Edwards as his primary inspiration as a coach, as a mentor for his current players. So it's very fitting, I think, that we talk about Lavelle Edwards as we discuss this team, his impact on that team, and just, you know, kind of that culture that he was able to build that has really been reborn and reflected in the current Kalani Sitake team that we're seeing. You know, we mentioned, we had the chance to talk with some of the 96 team members a few weeks ago when they were in town for that ASU game. We mentioned on this, both in the cover story and also in this program, that they were recognized at that game at halftime. And one thing that they mentioned was that, you know, the guys on that team just had attitude. They had this swagger, and I think that's definitely something that we're seeing from the current team as well. Absolutely.
I talked to Tim McTire, and I asked him about that swagger that the 96 team had, and he was really quick to correct me. He said, it's not swagger, it's attitude. The team today has swagger. I feel like that's the 2021 version of attitude. 96 was attitude. And, you know, they got that from Coach Edwards. He created that culture. Kalani has his culture that he wants now. And it was a group of guys that would do anything for their head coach. It wasn't just a bunch of really good players on one team. It was one team with a lot of good players. And that's kind of what we see today as well. And, you look at that 96 team, they were pretty stacked.
Seriously.
Chad Lewis, all-pro NFL tight end. Rob Morris was a first-round draft pick for the Colts, won a Super Bowl. I mean, Steve Sarkisian is the head coach at Texas now at quarterback. I mean, that's a just really talented group that did a lot of great things and went to a New Year's Six game, the only time in BYU history that has happened. They were a pretty complete, perfect football team. Kalani's put a big emphasis on all three aspects of the game, offense, defense, special teams. And, offense and special teams have been pretty solid this year for BYU. Defense has had their moments. They've flashed here and there. But back in 96, all three aspects were as perfect as they could be. And that's something going forward that I think that was definitely a very Lavelle strategy to look at, is all three of those aspects. That was something that they put a lot of emphasis on. And so for Kalani to do the same, that is the blueprint.
No, definitely. And look, we here at the Universe Sports Talk podcast, we love special teams. And
we sure do.
When you're able to have the type of athlete on special teams, like a James Dye, right, who is a kick returner, and they had the slogan, punt you die, right? If you have that kind of weapon, not only in the two main phases of offense and defense, but in special teams, that just takes your team to another level where you reach that complete, perfect nature. And I think, with this year, with a guy like Ryan Rico as your punter, right?
You punt, you die for a different reason.
You punt, you die for a different reason. And I think that just shows you, the type of athletes they're recruiting across the board and how they're detail-oriented, and you have to be not only concerned about, obviously BYU has always been concerned about the quarterback, and they always will be. However, you have to have all three phases, and I think Kalani, that's something that he learned from Lavelle, and it's something that he's really, really harping on, is having that complete nature.
Let's go back to quarterbacks for a sec. Obviously, Sarkisian had a tremendous season, one of the best single seasons in BYU quarterback history, which says a lot considering the guys that they've had. I mean, Gifford Nielsen, Mark Wilson, Jim McMahon, Steve Young, Robbie Bosco, Ty Detmer.
Heisman winning Ty
Detmer, Pro Football Hall of Fame. Steve Young and Super Bowl champion Jim McMahon, all these great quarterbacks, and Steve Sarkisian to come and be plugged into that system that already existed and have the success he did. And, that's something that BYU is starting to do again. They're becoming a quarterback school.
Definitely. And when you talk about, what is the legacy of this 96 football team? I think primarily it's winning, right? They won so many games, beat Utah every year. Those rivalries are so important. And now returning to 2021, BYU finally beat Utah again. And so I think when you look at what is that blueprint, what is that legacy, it's winning games. And it's also doing it in a way, like Kalani Sitake always says, loving and learning, which is an ideology and a culture that he took from Lavelle Edwards, always cites him, always mentions him in press conferences. And so, when you look back and you think, hey, what was that legacy? Lavelle Edwards, a player's coach, and that results in winning games. And when you're winning games, everything else works out.
Just win, baby.
Just win.
It's the key to everything. Just win. And, one of the other legacies of that team, I feel like, is the attitude that they had. They had fun playing football. They all bought in. Yeah. They did it together, and they made some noise. Actually, a few years ago, my dad came out for a game, and we ran into Derek Stevenson, who was a linebacker on that 96 team.
Yep.
And my dad was a senior in college in the 96 season, so he remembers it well. He was at all the games. It's one of his favorite sports teams ever. And so when we ran into Derek Stevenson, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy who started all the fights on kickoff, And that's that attitude, and you can remember that 20-something years later.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that a little bit this year. The Nakua brothers have brought a lot of life into the team.
But I think it's not only, we don't want to be known for starting fights.
No,
but doing it in a way, obviously you have the attitude, you have the confidence, right? But doing it in a way that you can back up, doing it in a way that when you're off the field, you can say that you love those guys that you were getting a little chippy with. You don't hold grudges.
It's the passion, it's the fire.
And you look at a guy like Derek Stevenson, right? Great guy, nice guy. I think both of us have had interactions. And so it's the attitude, but it's attitude with this confidence that you can back it up, and with love that really there's no hard feelings after you leave the gridiron.
And you're going to leave everything that you have on the gridiron.
Exactly.
And that's what the 96 team did. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what they did the best, is giving it all on the field.
Yeah.
And
leave it all on the field.
Leave it all on the field. That's what BYU needs to do in the Big 12, because there's going to be a lot to give on the field, let me tell you.
Definitely.
They're in for a treat.
Well, those are kind of our thoughts on the 96 team, and we'll throw back to you guys for the rest of the show.
Peace out.
Thanks, Caleb and Jackson. We hope you've enjoyed this Universe Live special edition of the 1996 BYU football team. If you would like to learn more about what the stories we discussed today, be sure to pick up or look up the November issue of the Daily Universe magazine. The digital version of the magazine can be found at universesports.com. Also, if you'd like to watch the show again or share it with your friends and family, be sure to go to the Universe Live YouTube page. For everyone that worked on the show, I'm Tanner Lewis saying so long and go Cougs.